This came up. Ryan, you were my guest on multiple podcasts last week, and talked a bit about Flint Hook. And honestly, when the criticisms of Flint Hook came in, I was a little bit bummed, because if you've seen my Game Curious video, which is just why I do the Game Curious videos, is like, this is my instant, immediate reaction to playing this game for the very first time. It might even annoy people like Ryan that I'm gonna just kind of poke around in these things for a little bit. But man,
the last Game Curious video.
Well, Strafe's a different animal, but
What's this button do?
Anyway,
I'm gonna click this button a couple hundred times.
I'm curious. I'm game curious about your interesting HUD and your interesting home screen and the options that you have that are taking me back to 1996. Anyway, I was on a really, really big high while playing Flint Hook for the first time. Like, that game is just, the gameplay is really fucking tight. The controls are so good.
Me too.
It was exciting.
Yep.
But as time goes on, as your first impression fades, and we got a little bit of roguelike fatigue, and I think there's a valid criticism there. I don't think it is unique to Flint Hook by any means. I think Flint Hook came out at the wrong time. Had Flint Hook came out 1.5 years, 2 years ago, I think it's super fresh and super cool, and we wouldn't be talking about it in this way. But it got me thinking about indie trends that need to stay and indie trends that need to go, and I have a feeling that you two gentlemen might have some opinions in this regard. So I'm going to throw out some initial examples, and then we'll spin off from here as far as identifying a few things that we want to see either stay or be more focused on, and the things we kind of want to throw out here. So Flint Hook and roguelikes and roguelike fatigue, that's out there. Mm-hmm. In a similar vein, I would throw Strafe in that regard. My frustrations with Strafe are on a lot of its roguelike gameplay design in the FPS genre. The other curious recent release that got a lot of buzz last week was Dead Cells went into early access, and it hinges on some roguelike stuff, but more of a Metroidvania style of the roguelikes, and also the Souls-likes, if I can just keep borrowing these terms, because I don't have a problem using them when people know what I mean when I say them. So yes, it's kind of lazy, but also you know what I'm talking about, and we're trying to have a really tightly wound podcast here that has a very strict deadline of how long the show is going to go. Are we 2 hours in? What's going on? On the other end, I think I found out about this announcement after Dead Cells, and I'm starting to contemplate, man, do I want to play another Metroidvania? Man, do I want to play another Souls-like? Man, it's early access. Will that ever be done? Those are my reactions there. Risk of Rain 2 gets announced, and I remember reading about it. Of Risk of Rain 2 is announced. I was like, okay, I really loved some Risk of Rain. I don't want to play Risk of Rain. Oh shit, Risk of Rain 2's in 3D. All of a sudden, it feels like it's a new game to me, and it's doing something different that got me excited when compared to some of these other examples. And I guess if I could start with one of you, Ryan, maybe pick something either you want to see continue or you want to uphold in some indie gaming trends, or something you want to throw out immediately, and then we'll come back and do the opposite one. What immediately jumps out to you?
Okay. I'm definitely feeling the roguelike fatigue. So, okay, just real quick, I just want to say, as a developer,
I want to defend it too. I want to defend it too, for sure.
To do roguelikes. Yeah. So the reason why is because you can build a game that feels much bigger without having to spend as much time to make it feel much bigger. So, for instance, with Strafe, if Strafe had been several levels that had to be laid out, had to be built, that takes a lot more time than writing a decent procedural generation algorithm that's going to build these levels and drop these enemies in and keep that going. And so if you can do that, which that does take time, that's front-loaded time. If you can do that, you can have infinite amount of levels that you can scale with difficulty, and you can do all kinds of things with. To lay out very precise levels takes an extended amount of time. It's not front-loaded amount of time. It's time across the project, but you're limited to a very finite number of levels. And those are the levels that you make. And each of those levels has a cost as far as time. Time costs money for developers, designers, writers, even if you're doing story, what have you. So a small team is always going to balance. If we have the developers up front who can write the algorithms, then we can create thousands and thousands of level combinations, make our game feel big without spending the long-term time of developing set levels, fixed levels, designed levels. That's the big thing. Designed levels. The designing process takes forever. To tweak and get it right and to make it feel good and make the difficulty work and all of that. That is a very time-consuming process. And we have felt this in our own development. Like we have looked at this and we're trying to figure out how to do this as well. This is just a problem that indie devs face. But the problem is that we have gotten to a point where a game like Strafe has Quake-like graphics. It does not have Quake-like level design.
Yeah.
It is not laid out like the Quake axe. You have like the, 5 axe? 4 axe?
I mean, who knows? I can't get past level 2. Because
it's been a while.
I only get to see 4 enemies in Strafe because it's so damn hard and random and not balanced.
But there is something about this, and I think this is part of the reason why people really are loving Zelda. And specifically, I've talked about this with you guys, but like in Zelda, there are these I'm not going to say what they are, but there's these specific levels that are really crafted. They're just very crafted, and you have to go through them and solve puzzles, and there's a very specific nature to them, and it is so refreshing. And it's a reminder, and we talked about this on one of the podcasts last week. I can't remember which one. One of them we talked about the fact that we see Quake graphics and we assume that they are doing Quake level development, and we fail to remember that Quake was a team of probably, I don't know, at least 20, maybe bigger people. Like, it was a big dev team that did this, plus designers, plus level creators, plus all of these things. And we see those graphics and we think, well, surely you've got the power to do the exact same thing that they did. But that's not true. Like Strafe was probably a team of like 5, maybe 10.
If that.
I mean, if that, so it's a very tough problem, but the roguelike thing is starting to wear hard on us because we miss the experiences of the NES and Super NES and these just really thought out, crafted levels that we associate with pixel graphics. And I think pixel graphics gets a bad rap because everybody does it because it is cheaper to do. 3D is much more expensive. It's much harder to do. You really need somebody who knows how to do 3D to partner with the developers and the designer in order to make all that work. But we have seen so many pixel graphic games that are roguelikes now that it's just like those things are starting to get smashed together, and it's constantly like, okay, I just need a break from what has become the lowest common denominator of indie games. I don't want a pixel graphic roguelike game.
So you took 2, but you have valid
How do you
points.
really feel?
Yeah. You took 2 because I always honestly I was remaining ignorant of Strafe when it was released, and then when somebody let it slip. I don't remember if it was in the office or if it was a headline, but somebody let it slip that Strafe was a roguelike, and I was annoyed. I was really annoyed that I found that detail out because honestly, to that point,
I was too.
I felt that too.
To that point, I had assumed.
I was really excited about it and bought it.
Yeah.
And then you spoiled that, and I was like, oh, seriously?
I was assuming we were going to get a Quake or a Quake 2 campaign because it was so just like embracing this is 1996. Like we're going to do this thing. I was like, oh, then you've got a crafted campaign because also it's been like a year and a half since I saw your trailer. So you've been working on this thing and you know what you're making. So you're going to oh man, this is dirty. You're going to take the shortcut.
You just spent a year and a half on those blood splatters. They look nice.
It's cool. That's the best feature. It's like, but my reaction was, you're going to take your shortcut, but at the same time, I have a tremendous,
It's true though.
tremendous empathy for. I feel like a lot of these games come from the minds of developers that aren't necessarily the best at other skills. Like, their skill is in development to be able to solve these massive problems, to make this unique game that stands out to us because it has a unique feature that's more closely tied to development than game design, if that makes sense. Like, they have to, like, I don't know. It's just like a team of 5. You have these set of skills. You have these set of A skills. You have these set of B skills. You have these set of C skills. Like, I'm gonna have to like accept some. I'm prepared to accept some flaws in some regards, but like, because we have just seen an increase in game releases, we're all getting jaded as fans and as players, that there are these features that stand out as shortcuts that don't cut it anymore. And I think you hit 2 of them on the head, Ryan, with the roguelikes and also pixel graphics. Like, that's until you can work with an artist at the level of some of these developers, like, that's kind of what you have to go with. You have to go with the pixel graphics in some of the 2D games, and until you can get to break through to that next level. And to stand out in those 2 genres, it's really tough now in 2017 to get me to. You got to have something extra, and a couple of these that we've talked about haven't had that something extra. But Coop, is there anything that stands out to you as far as something that
Yeah, it's kind of related. I feel like, I mean, this isn't isolated to indie games, but like, I think the decisions people have made for their... Well, I'll start off by saying I'm getting tired of seeing the Souls-like comparison. Okay. It seems like a cheap excuse to pull attention to it, but it's like, oh, we just made our game hard.
I was going to say, if I can pull out that conversation from you, it's that they're even misusing that phrase. It's just like, oh, you made a hard game.
Because,
like, I think you and I think, and I think a lot of people are still interested in Souls likes. If you define it, if you go down the bullet list of what makes a Souls game, yes, we want to play more of those, because
it's like there's
there is
so
a
much
crafted
more to it than
there.
just a game that kills you. Yeah, it's like you can play Butcher, which kills you over and over and over, and it's not fun, and that's not a Souls game at all.
Right.
But I think, like, I feel like games that go the hard route or games that go the roguelike way, it's like they're just trying to add length to the game, because I feel like there's just this huge overblown issue of value that gamers feel like they're entitled to. It's like, I'm paying X amount of money for this game, so I need to get this many hours of enjoyment out of it, or it's a ripoff.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of drives me crazy. It's like, I know AAA games have been getting ridiculously long. Like, the adventure games like Witcher and, even Zelda. You can play Zelda for 100 hours easy.
Yeah, how big are those teams? We're talking about like 20-person teams for Quake.
Yeah.
And like, And
then, yeah, but it's like if somebody releases even like a shooter, I mean, shooters that I used to play when I was younger, it's like 8 to 10 hours tops.
Yeah.
And we were completely fine with it then, but it's like almost that doesn't cut it anymore. Like a shooter's got to be 15 to 20.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Not with all those.
So, yeah, I feel like people are pulling out these, we've got to do roguelike because we can't make a campaign story that long with our size team, or we just need to make it hard so this game seems like it's longer than it really is. And that's kind of annoying to me. I just want, a game should be what it is, and if you had fun with it, then it's worth whatever you paid for. I mean, I've paid $60 for really short games and had just as much fun as I did longer games. I mean, it's Inside, for example. That's what, 4 hours?
Yeah.
You can play it in 1 or 2
How
sittings.
long did it take him to produce that? Like, that's going back to Ryan's point about like crafting experiences take time, and I don't know if it's like a audience education thing where they have to also be more understanding, but there is like, I guess my point with this conversation is the shortcuts won't cut it anymore. Like, there's just too much competition, and 2017 being such a ridiculous year as it is, it's like that stuff stands out a lot more as far as like I've played that game a couple times before, so the bar for breakthrough indie games has been raised a lot in the last 18 months, I'd say. And that's where I look at like games like Flint Hook that were obviously under development before like 18 months or 2 years ago. They've been in development for a bit, but it's kind of like, no, that window kind of closed, and it's not a fault of your game, but also I'm tired of playing some of those games. So,
yeah. No, I do still have hope because like I've been following Pray for the Gods.
Yeah.
Which looks incredible, and that's just 3 guys, which is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I want to come back to that, but I also want you to reconnect, Coop.
Okay.
Sorry. One last time, and we'll push through to the end. How do we sound now?
Hello.
Yeah. Why that works? I don't know. Okay. Give me a little breather.
You got quieter on my end. That's weird.
Yeah, you went. Yeah.
So
I got it.
Yeah.
I got it. I'll do
Do
the
your pause.
I'll do the transition and then
but don't transition out because I want to say one more thing about this.
Yeah. So you mentioned Pray to the Gods, Ryan. What were you thinking?
Well, I just want to. So the question I have is, why are there so many developers? Like, I don't mean that. I'm a developer. I don't mean that as a derogatory against myself. I mean, it seems like there are a lot more developers than there are game artists that will that will work for free. That there are game sound designers that are going to work. I mean, honestly, like you think about, like, we have built games. I make no money from them. I've made $0 is what I have made from games that I have developed. But I like doing it. But I am limited in that I am not an artist, so I do the best I can. So my game that I made, A Killer Time, is pixel art because I can draw some squares next to each other and make it look like a thing, and enough for you to understand like what I'm trying to communicate to you. But if I've tried to make that game as a 3D game, like I have to learn, at the very least, I have to learn how to use Blender. Because I'm certainly not going to shell out the hundreds of dollars from Maya or Studio 3D Max. I have to learn how to do 3D rendering. I have to learn how 3D rendering pipelines work. I have to learn a lot of things that are not
like all the sacrifice of learning more development skills.
Exactly. Like what I excel at is I excel at writing code. That's what I've done. That's what my career is based in, and so. You see a lot of developers who are trying to stretch themselves to make a game happen because it's so hard to get together with other people and say, look, this game might not make any money. We might not get anybody to play this game. Are you willing to help me out and do the part that you're going to do? Are you willing to be the 3D modeler who models for my game that may not make any money? And it seems like overwhelmingly the answer is no. Like those people can find money because it seems like there's less of them than there are devs. Devs seem to be everywhere. And you give us enough tooling that we're like, well, screw it. I'll just make this myself. I can draw some pixels and I'll throw some sound effects that I bought off a site and I'll put out a game. And like you said, like the bar is getting raised. The bar keeps getting higher. Risk of Rain 2 is going 3D. Even Nidhogg 2 is going like 16-bit graphics up from their blocky stuff because they made some money. And guess what? They can hire somebody to do art for them full time. Like, it's just like I don't know where we find this balance of, and I don't know if there's like some site that we don't know of where you can go pair up with these people or what, but like it just feels like devs are just plentiful. They're everywhere.
I feel like we talked about the pendulum last week. Yeah, pendulum's got to start coming back to finding artists at this point. Like I think you're onto something. That the devs are now outnumbering. Part of just the growth in the tools and the ease of use of some of the tools. But also, like, there is a little bit of, like, these tools are young, and it's going to kind of weed itself out. Like, I mean, Steam has that problem now. Like, just getting on Steam is not enough in the last 2 years. Like, you've got to promote yourself. You've got to have a game worth promoting. Eventually, that sorts itself out. Hopefully, it doesn't like burst a bubble or anything like that. But I think your question is fair. Of like, where are the artists that are breaking into the industry? Because I feel like the game artists that get discovered actually have other skills and have other plans. They're not like primarily trying to be the game artist, And if they could be somehow paired up with those young, thirsty developers, those are the ones that that succeed. Like, you look at, I don't know, it's just kind of like, where are the, for lack of a better term, but just a personality we've attached ourselves to, Coop, is just like, the next Edmund McMillan, like just that pairing for Team Meat, for Super Meat Boy, like those types of groups. I feel like there's a lot of development talent out there that, hopefully they're like, taking these games that we are, criticizing on a high level here. Hopefully they're getting snatched up by, larger or mid-sized developers and continuing to work on the game industry, because obviously there's a lot of talent there, but it's got to be frustrating for them too, that, they've got to go for these shortcuts or these tropes that are, getting plentiful, because they have to get their game out too. Like, also at the same time, you want to get your game out. It might be your first game, it might be your second game, it might be your third game, or your first big release. But do you, if you want to make that well-crafted experience, do you want to spend 6 years on it? Because, 4 of those years aren't your primary skill. Like, you've nailed the game part, you've nailed the development part. And I don't know. When I play through games like Strafe, like, I am just struck by my empathy as a developer, or as just being empathetic to the game development experience. But also, like, this is my reaction as a player too. So, which I think is a valid opinion in this year, that like, there are more games than ever, there are better games than ever, and to stand out, it's a tough world out there.